Okay, let's see if we are now live. I'm not really sure just yet.
My screen shows live. You
All
said
right,
that.
well, let's just assume we're live now. Hey, it's Bernard Nomberg, and we have been doing a series of conversations for the last few months dealing with how different segments of society is dealing with the pandemic. And we have dealt with school and education. We've dealt with telemedicine, gosh, a whole list. And I'll put a link when we're finished in the comments section here. But today I've got my friend from the Atlanta area, Megan Zavieh, who has joined us for a conversation about family summer planning. How are you doing, Megan? It's so good to see you again.
It's good to see you too, Bernard. I am doing quite well. Can't complain.
Well, good, good. I know that we've now officially transferred or moved into summer hour or summer months of the calendar. I'm not really sure what that means anymore for 2020, but I know the calendar is telling me, at least a couple days ago was the longest day of the calendar year, and it's getting warmer outside. And I wanted us to, you were one of the first people I thought about for this type of conversation because I know you've got a house full, you're very busy professionally. You and your husband are both on the go, and you've just got so much going on, but you're so organized. And I love your podcast. And I knew you'd be the right person for us to have a chat this afternoon. So thank you for making a few minutes.
Yeah, thank you for having me. We certainly do have a house full, that's for sure.
For those of you who don't know Megan or her practice or her family, she practices in the Atlanta area, or excuse me, physically lives in the Atlanta area,
Right.
but actually practices law on the West Coast out of California. And I'm going to let Megan kind of explain that a little bit as we get into this. But what I want to talk about, Megan, is traditionally, I did it. We all do it when we have families and the kids are coming up and we get into the summertime. And you usually, at least for our planning in the late fall, early winter, as the clock turns to January, the calendar turns to January, I'm making my plans for our family for whether it's camp or summer school or family vacation trips. We all, at least the way we have always done it, is we've got the calendar year we look at, we're trying to make those plans. Well, that all came to a real quick halt for almost the entire world in late January, early February, and into the March area. And I assume that it affected your family just like all the other families.
Oh, absolutely. And we had a big trip planned in April. It was actually March 31st, I think we were supposed to leave. And we held on to that, until the last minute. We're like, we're clearly not going. But that was supposed to be our big trip of the year. And then summer, we had some vague ideas of what we were going to do. And then, come March, it was like, well, don't plan this and don't plan that. And so we basically made no plans and waited to see what happened around our town to see what was even available. Certainly no big international, exotic trips.
Well, we had, as you guys, we had our summer trips all planned. We take an annual multi-generation family trip in the middle of the summer somewhere, typically in the United States. Well, that all went away. Summer schooling for my daughter at University of Georgia, that's all been moved online. Jobs that were lined up all got changed. And it really has sent most of the world in a tailspin when making plans and trying to do fun things. Because traditionally, at least during my childhood, the summertime, and I know that was ages ago, but the summertime is for when you get to relax and you get to do fun things that you work so hard during the school term that you don't get to do, but you're looking forward to it. And you have children who I'm sure, like all children, are looking forward to seeing their friends in the summer and camps and all those things. How did you guys handle that as a family in preparing for what's now the ever evolving new norm?
Well, honestly, I feel looking back over the past few months, like there's been a grieving process, because when it first started, and it was like bricks tumbling, one after another, almost like dominoes, where in March 1st, our school said we're going to close for 2 days. And they said, well, we're about to hit spring break anyway. We're going to close for a week, and then spring break. And then our Aikido canceled, and then our gymnastics canceled, so one thing after another. And we really, I think in that time, suffered quite a bit as we sort of came to terms with the fact that everything was coming unraveled. And then as we approach summer, we are in such a better place emotionally and able to cope with all of this that our summer plans hadn't been fully solidified yet. And once we canceled that March trip, it was really, really hard to do. We just sort of sat back and we're like, okay, we're not making plans. We're going to see what happens. And instead of trying to plan something big, which is much more my husband and my style, we tend to kind of go all out and like, let's do something wild and crazy for summer. Instead, we just went, okay, it's going to be a little bit at a time, see what we can do. And we're literally taking it week by week. So nobody's registered for a bunch of camps. We waited to see what happened. We got some guidelines from our local city where we do most of our summer type activities. And we said, okay, here's what we can accept. Here's what we can't accept. So you guys can do this kind of camp, but not that kind. Mm-hmm. And the kids are getting a little bit older. So some of them said, okay, I just don't want to do anything. I don't want to go to those sorts of activities. Mm-hmm. So we tried to plan other things that are local and small. Like I took a day off and took them hiking a couple hours from home. We could hike 20 minutes from home, but we decided to go a couple hours away and just do something different. So we're kind of really rolling with it and trying to see what's available that we're willing to deal with the restrictions and just try and have some fun and accept that this isn't going to be like last summer or the summer before.
Yeah, it's almost you're making new traditions.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe in the back of, at least in the back of my mind, these new traditions, well, maybe it's for just this year.
Yeah.
But the reality is we don't know if these are now going to be the new traditions going forward, because as you said, and as we see in the news, maybe not daily, but certainly weekly, laws are changing. Information about how to deal with the pandemic is coming out more and more. We're learning much more, which is a good thing. But you're right. We too started out with the grand ideas of how we were going to change and do all of these things, but it very quickly really became apparent we needed to take this on a day by day, and maybe we'll look forward to what maybe we're going to be doing this next weekend approach. Yeah. Now that has slowly moved out a little bit. Have you guys made any summer plans for June, July, August, September? Have you looked that far out, or are you still keeping it kind of a week by week or every couple of weeks view of things?
Really more week to week. We have one potential plan. A friend's family lives on Sanibel Island in Florida, and we've never been. Mm-hmm. And partly, honestly, because of the pandemic, the family has, like, not our direct friends, but those who own property there have kind of loosened up a bit and said, you know what? Anybody who wants to come visit, come visit. Like, this is, this is the time to kind of rally as friends. And so there's a lot of kids when our two families travel together, which we do often. And the grandparents have been like, oh, this many kids at once was too much. And now this year they said, just come visit. So we've been trying to plan something, but also very concerned that we don't expose to 80-year-olds, to everywhere we've been. So that's the closest we've come to any kind of plans further out. And we're talking like probably a month out, but we haven't quite been able to pull the trigger because there's so much uncertainty.
And not to delve too deeply into family discussions, but when you talk about these types of plans with your children, and I'm speaking for myself as well, I have learned, or I've had to take the approach. Now, my children are a little bit older than yours. I have one in college and one just out of college. But as part of the discussion is the reality, just because we're making these plans, that doesn't mean we're actually going to be able to go through with them. Is that part of discussions with the family?
Yeah, I mean, my kids start at age 6. So we go 6 through 13, and there's 4 of them. The older ones, very much understand, like, this is tentative. This is what we hope to do. The youngest has a very hard time with that. So we talk in very, hopeful terms. We're like, we're hoping we might go here. We could have booked a reservation and paid for it. But all we tell the youngest, is we're hoping to go, because they can't process so much change. And, little kids get their hearts set on things and they don't understand when you say, this is why we're changing. I mean, at one point, the youngest would go around going, coronavirus. Oh, it's that coronavirus again, because all these things kept interrupting their plans. And so we didn't want to make it negative that way. So yeah, you do have to talk to them a little differently and sort of shift their expectations to hopes. And otherwise they get very, very disappointed. And we don't want any of them to look back at this time and just feel a bunch of negativity and, dashed hopes and broken promises.
And that's what's, at least for me, that's what's so hard as a parent, regardless of the age of your children, they're still your children. And they look to you for the guidance and love and leadership and fun planning. And you still want to give all those things. But the reality is we probably don't know much more than the children do. Now, maybe your 13-year-old is into a little bit more, has a little more knowledge than the 6-year-old. But my 21 and 24-year-olds, they certainly know. And usually they're the ones who come to me if I've made some, hey, let's go do X. And one of them will say, I don't think so. Maybe we need to push it back a couple of days because here's what I have read, maybe on Twitter or seen in the news or something. But that's what has made this so challenging, among other things and all the other things we have to deal with. The practice of law, which we hadn't even gotten into, and about how you do that on one coast and practice on the other. And I'll come back to that in a minute. I know that at least for me and many other lawyers, the practice of law is gone completely online at times. And that to me is a little easier to make plans and not have to be in a physical space all the time. As long as I have internet or Wi-Fi, I can do what I need to do. But my children have learned that over the years. Yeah. But getting into this summer, I remember talking back in late February, early March, when there was the initial talks of what's coming down the pipe. Nobody really knew, I think, until maybe mid to late March. And at least for us, the reality set in, I'd say the last couple of days of March and early April, probably about that same time you were going to be taking your trip. And I want to take you to that conversation when you had with the family, because I want to share with you what mine was like. We were not all in the physical same space. We were on FaceTime and we were in different places. And it was, guys, we're not going anywhere. The governor has put in, at the time, it was, I think, called shelter in place or safe at home. I forget which was which. And you effectively were housebound. And were you at that point when you had to make that decision that all the trips, anything in the future for now, is put on complete hold?
Yeah, I mean, that was the same in Georgia. We had the shelter in place order, and it was over those last couple of weeks of March that all those dominoes were falling. We were adamant we were still going to Costa Rica on March 31st in those couple of weeks. And then you're right, it just sort of started to set in. And then breaking the news to the kids about Costa Rica was really hard because they had their hearts set and we were going with another family. And they too were super hardcore. We're going, nothing's going to stop us.
Right.
And then it turned within a few days from we're going to, oh, there's no way we're going. Like, not even, do you think maybe we should? It was like one extreme to the other. And breaking that news was really the tipping point for our family, because that was something that they had planned and had their hearts set on and talked to their friends about for months. And when that got canceled, it was kind of an easy leap from there to we're not planning anything else either.
Does it make it any easier at all for the children knowing that it's not just your family that's being impacted by this? It's everybody.
Absolutely.
Does it?
Absolutely. If it was just us, there would be so much sense of unfairness and injustice.
Right. Wait,
it's
not my house. That's in your house too. I think.
Well, that second plane sense of fairness, I've got, they're all going through that area. But yeah, that makes it a lot easier. And they're, being able to talk to their friends. We've pretty much always through this whole period had another family in our little bubble. And that has helped tremendously. And having each other. There's 4 of them. So no one's sitting at home alone, sad and lonely and frustrated.
Yeah. Well, I know that kids, they need structure. They need to know what's next. And I'm not saying that they all like it. It's just being that there's a sense of some type of normalcy. Have you set up any type of routines with the kids? Is there some expectations? All right, on Tuesday, we're all going to clean the house or whatever. I'm just making up stuff as I go here. But have you found that to be part of the new norm for you guys? We're now, April to May, May to June, and we're quickly getting into July. How did all that take place? I know that the school term finally ended in a weird way for everybody, but take us kind of through a little bit of that process for you guys.
Well, yeah, as the school term wound down, that was just before Memorial Day for us. So we're about a month out. We took a week of no structure. We said everybody's been working, to their level and doing all kinds of juggling. Everybody had, at this point, I had 4 kids in 4 different classes, which maybe that sounds normal to most people, but in Montessori, I've usually had the luxury of more than one child in the same class. And of course, this was the year. They were all in different classes. So the juggling was really challenging during school. And when it ended, we took a week and we said, you sleep as late as you want, you roll out of bed, you watch TV, you play a game, it doesn't matter. We're just taking a week off. But after that week, we said, okay, now we have to get back to some kind of schedule, because frankly, although that sounds luxurious and wonderful, in truth, everybody gets a bit cranky when there's no structure around their day. So everybody has different structures because they all go at their own pace and their own interests, but everybody gets up and has certain activities they do every day. We've kept up with a bit of academics with all 4 of them in different ways. Like one's got some reading help that's online with someone from school. Others have some online games that they're playing that are academic in nature, just to keep them active and have something interesting to do that's actually academic. But the older ones set their own schedule for the day, but that's done every day. And some form of exercise is done every day. So as we get everybody doing a certain number of things each day on their own schedules, that's sort of how the structure fits around them.
They're all at different ages. There's a 6 to 7 year age gap, and even my 2 daughters, there's a 3-year age gap. They're different stations in life. The younger one is still in college. The older one has a job, and sometimes we forget that she's still working. Now, most of her work is online, and she can do it from home for the most part, and has for about 3 months. But it's still, and my daughter today, the younger daughter, left to go back to Athens. She's been cleared to go back. They have online classes, but the medical lab where she's working has opened up and set up all the parameters, and she's itching to get out of the house. She's been living with her dad for 110 days. She loves me.
No one's counting though, right?
Yeah. But it's time. She needs to get back out and do her thing. Now we had a lot of discussions before any of this was put into place. She's very conscientious about being socially distant, those things. With medicine being hopefully in her future with medical school, that's really I wouldn't say a highlight, but it certainly is on her radar, probably more so than many kids her age. So I feel okay with her going there, but where I'm going with this is in the last 3 months with her living at home and her friends also being home, which is unusual. Most college kids are going to go study abroad or they work in their college towns. But living back at home took a real adjustment for both she and I, because I'm just used to having just 2 dogs. And my house shuts down early at night, where college kids, their schedule is not quite the same as the parents' night schedule. But it really has induced many more conversations, which I bet it has at your houses as well. Now,
absolutely.
Traditionally, have your kids either gone away to sleepaway camps or local day camps in the Atlanta area?
So never sleepaway. they wouldn't want to actually. They like being home. They
Right.
usually, what we do is we separate out everybody kind of by week, not like this is your week for camp and this is your week for camp,
Right.
but we ask them, what do you want to do? And we look at the camp schedule and we work out transportation, how it's all going to shake out. So usually somebody's at camp for part of a day for, 1 week, and maybe two of them go to a different camp the next week. So they get time away from each other, which makes a tremendous difference. It doesn't matter which one you pluck out, but if you take one, the dynamic changes.
Oh,
So they usually have a bit of alone time plus some activities out of the house. They're not getting nearly as much this year, although no one's really complaining either. But yeah, that's typically what we do is everybody's got something during the summer that they're going to go do and learn something new and have a fun activity, make new friends that don't go to their school. And they're missing most of that.
yeah. And I'm envisioning at your house, you're kind of an air traffic controller trying to set up all of the schedules. Do you guys have like a large, I don't know how you do it, but do you have a big board or a chalkboard or a pin board or something that kind of says, all right, here's where everybody's going to be on these weeks?
I've got a big board in my office that has the days of the week, and then everybody has their own color. And we write down, you've got clay this day, and everybody's got a keto that day, and yeah, it's quite the
You have to
the organizational task.
be organized. Now let's talk about you work from home when you're not out on the West Coast. How do you balance that during this time period with some of the children or maybe all the children at different times being home when you need that time? And I know they're getting older and they know that you've got to work and not be bothered at times. And I'm not sure about what your husband's work responsibilities have been, but how do you balance? How have y'all dealt with that?
Yeah, it's a good question because at the end of school, I said, well, normally at this time, I'm embarking on 10 weeks of juggling working from home and kids at home. Only I've just finished 10 weeks of it.
Yeah.
And I'm about to start another 10 and then perhaps more after that. So we do this normally in the summer where, I have kind of a rhythm to the year, only it started 10 weeks early this year. And what I normally do is I cut back on my work during the summer. I reduce the hours that appointments can be scheduled. I still work when they're home, but it's less. And then I have more hours that I devote to them. Well, that didn't work out quite the same this year because it's all just a big blur. And I actually expanded my hours during school because people needed more hours from me. Clients needed my availability to be more. And I wasn't driving kids around like I normally am. I mean, I typically stop working around 3 in the afternoon and head out. I pick up kids and go here and go there and, all the kid activities. Well, none of that was happening. So the hours already started to change during the school year. And so coming into summer, we're sort of back to, okay, how can we shift the schedule a bit? So I have reduced, again, some of the hours so I can spend more time with them because they're not expected to do the level of schoolwork they were doing during the school year. And they are pretty good about letting me get the work done. But I call upon help. Both of my parents, thankfully, live very close by. So they're able to help. And my husband now works from home all the time, which is mostly great. I mean, I love having him here. If he never goes back to an office, I'm totally happy. But it also means more time where he's on the phone and the kids have to be quiet. So, because he's on the phone basically all day. So that's made a bit of a wrinkle, but we've gotten really good at it in the last 3 months, honestly. So summer just kind of blends to the last 3 months at this point.
I know several local lawyers who have moved everything out of their garages, even the cars, everything else. That's become their workspace.
That'd be very hot.
Well, even hotter would be moving up into the attic. I know one lawyer who's moved into an unair conditioned. He finally got a wall unit put in, but he's used that. And as Atlanta, like Birmingham, is super hot even now. It's pushing 85 or so, and quickly we'll be getting into the 90s. But it is pretty, I wouldn't say amazing, but it's unique for the times how people have learned how to adapt.
I actually love that part of the virus. I mean, for all of its negativity, it has pushed people to do things like working from home and actually talking to their families more and slowing down. And I will take all of those benefits. If we have to deal with this, at least there's a silver lining.
Well, I was going to say, if there's some good things that have come out of what's happened this year, that's for me one of it as well. Now, I'm physically in my office, but my situation is a little different than a lot of people. Like I said, I just have 2 dogs at home. I live 5/10 of a mile from the office. I frequently walk up here. I could do this at the house, but I like the change of scenery. The way our office dynamics are set up, we're all in our own quadrants of our suite, so we're not near each other, and we're working on skeleton crew. But anyway, going back to the parents and planning, has the school system announced when school is going to start back and how that's going to look yet? Or are we still a little early for that?
Well, that actually brings up a big issue for us. So our public schools have not yet announced. The budget's supposed to be passed by July 1st. And I think that's a major piece of what the public schools can do. What we've heard so far is we're right by multiple counties. So one of them, which we don't sit in, has announced that they will not be requiring the students to wear masks. Our private schools are starting to issue some guidance, and the one where 3 of my children go has announced that they do intend to require the children to wear masks. I'm highly opposed to the children wearing masks in school, and it has led me to get very active and very outspoken on that issue. And I think it's quite likely we'll be homeschooling those 3. So,
and I've heard a lot of families are struggling, and I'm not saying you're struggling with that issue, but that's one of the big issues is what are the school system's guidelines and the options of learning what it takes now to homeschool your children.
And well, so, thankfully, I've always wanted to. I wanted to be homeschooled as a child. I was not, but from basically age 8 or 9, wanted to be. I took a independent educational path when I couldn't be homeschooled. Basically, my parents said no, and I went, I'm going to find another way. But I've always been interested in it. And so raising our kids, it's always been on our periphery. And we have friends who do, and another family that will most likely be embarking on this journey at the same time for the same reason, because of the masks. And so I don't feel that I'm starting from zero, but it's taken time to sink in, like everything, all of the conditioning that we're experiencing. Even take masks, for example. It sounded insane a few months ago. We went to Tech Show in February. My husband said, I've heard about this coronavirus thing. Are we supposed to wear masks? And we had a big argument over it because I was like, that's insane. Why would we wear masks? Right? That was nuts. And now today, everywhere you go, people are wearing them. So similar, experience with homeschooling, where we go from not being so sure about it or maybe be absolutely rejecting it. And as it gets closer to fall, just a lot more acceptance and understanding of what goes into it, and actually a lot of excitement over it too. So I suspect we'll be a homeschooling family soon, and a lot of others as well. A friend who's very active in the homeschooling community here told me yesterday that in Georgia, there's a 40% increase in homeschool families already filing their affidavits with the state, their affidavit of intention to homeschool.
I'm not surprised to hear that at all. So what in part what you're telling me is you're not going to be in the market for the $1,400 Gucci mask that I've seen advertised. That's not in your future for you and the children.
No.
People have become very creative. But anyway, I too have heard that in Alabama, the increase in applications has just skyrocketed. I recently spoke on this program a few weeks back with the headmaster at the school where my children graduated high school from. It's a local private school that goes 5th grade through 12th grade. It's in our neighborhood. And they're trying to figure out a hybrid situation potentially where one day of the week or 2 days of the week may be online classes only. Other days may be in class only. They're going through the entire school. I know every school is having to do this, but what I think is probably the most difficult thing for the schools, just like it is for families, is there's no clear-cut guidelines and what people know about how this disease and condition affects all of us. And I guess that's what makes some of this so difficult at times.
Oh,
Megan, but
absolutely. And Bernard, I would just add to that as I said, I got really active about this issue, and I actually wrote an open letter and did a ton of research, and we posted it online. It's at don'tmaskourkids.com. And the research that went into it was, multiple professionals, including some medical professionals, helping me dig. And at the end of the day, there isn't a clear, this is how it should be, or this is what's going to happen if we take this route or if we take that route. And I truly believe in my heart that everyone is trying their best to figure out what to do. And whether it's a public school superintendent overseeing thousands of kids, or private school owners overseeing a couple hundred, and each set of parents overseeing their 1, 2, 3, 4, however many, we're all just trying to do our best. And it is becoming divisive, which is a shame, but we're all just trying to protect the people we love most and figure out what to do with constantly changing guidance, research, news out of hospitals. I mean, this is the most challenging thing that I can even envision for our society to be trying to navigate. This is pure insanity in so many levels, and everyone's trying to do their best.
They are, but and one of the things that I struggle with is because social media can be just in your face 24/7 if you let it. Especially for me, Twitter can be a sword and a shield at times, because it's so easy to just spout off your emotions and then hide behind it, etc. But our childhood, and I hate to sound like the old guy, but in our childhood, we didn't have social media to deal with. We had 3 television stations and the newspaper. Whatever our parents said, that was good enough.
There was a 6 o'clock news, the 11 o'clock news, and the newspaper in the morning.
That's right. But kids get their information so much more quickly, and right or wrong, good or bad, they come upon it. And I just hope that I know, I have a feeling it's this way in your house as well, that it's such open dialogue. The children are learning from their parents as they should, or hopefully that they're trusting all that information, as opposed to whatever they're getting from whatever social media they use. And that dreaded Snapchat, I hate that. Oh gosh, I hate it. That's a whole nother conversation.
But our kids are not on social media for good reason.
Well, that's it. I think that's for the best. I'm sure it's coming at some point in the future for the kids, but it becomes harder and harder to keep them away from it. I know my nephew and nieces who are in the same age brackets as your kids. Oh, it's a struggle. It really is. Particularly if they happen to see, well, why is my neighbor, our neighbors down the street who have kids the same age, they're out at doing X or Y. Why can't we go do that? Well, we're not that family,
Yeah.
And I know
that's hard.
Those have got to be tough conversations as well.
Well, the good thing about the kids living through all of this, though, I have to say, is that they're getting an experience that is, unmatched. What they're seeing in terms of how families come together, how you deal with other families doing things differently, even the political discussions. I mean, there's so much happening right now, right? The dumpster fire that is 2020. There's so much fodder. And even, for example, with the masks, that's led to some interesting conversations. I mean, I was attacked by some parents for what I said in my letter. And then we got other people who respectfully disagreed, and we had open dialogues. One of my closest friends actually disagrees. And, the kids learn like, oh, we still love each other at the end of the day. Like, we can disagree on this, and that's okay. And they're learning how this actually is impacting the people around them, and the ability to have civil dialogue, which, I mean, you can't teach that out of a book.
No, you can't. And if they've seen any of the news over the past 4 months, you're right. So much is going on in our world. And I don't overshadow the bad or the negative that's coming out, but there is so much good that is to be learned from this. And you said it earlier, maybe that's some of the silver lining from all of this, whether it's family summer planning or big picture ideas of the way you look at the world and how to treat people. Megan, I can't thank you enough. I know we could keep talking on this for hours. There's so much to chat about. But thank you for letting us kind of peek into your world and your family's world a little bit.
Well, I'm happy to, Bernard, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Well, thank you. I sure appreciate your time and your patience, as I know you always have for conversations like this. Well, guys, as we've been trying to do for the last several weeks on Mondays and Thursdays, is have conversations about how the pandemic is impacting various segments of society. And today we talked with Megan Zavieh out of the Atlanta area. She were dealing with summer planning and how families are just coping and dealing with different issues and making plans and summer school or excuse me, summer plans and schooling. And we'll try to come to you also this upcoming Thursday. It's actually, we're going to be talking about the court system in Alabama and how the judges are making the courts slowly but surely available, and how they're adapting to Zoom and other online ways to continue that the courts still do what they do. Well, again, thank you, Megan, and I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.
You too, Bernard.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.